Alright, y'all. Welcome to drinking some hot water with just a hint, just a splash of whatever tea was left in here. Hi. Welcome back, or welcome if you've never been here before. Today we're gonna do kind of a chiller video, and I'm gonna be talking about 26 movies that I feel like are good for people that get spooked easily. that was truly the premise and like the mindset I had going into this. It was like, okay, is this movie that scary? No. Is it still entertaining? Still a good premise, plot, still a good story? Yes. So if you want a good story, but you don't want something too scary, this is the video for you. So I have 26 movies on here, and I split them up into different genres of horror, I guess, or just different types of movies that are considered scary, spooky, that might tickle your fancy. So we have psychological, thrillers, comedy horror, and horror/thriller classics. So there we go. First off, we have our psychological category. Now the first one on my list is Children of the Corn, the 1984 version. This is a Stephen King adaptation of a short story of the same name, and it's about a young couple that travels across the country, and they spot the body of a murdered boy in the middle of the road. Upon this, the couple travels into the small town to try to get some help, only to find that it is solely populated by children in a sinister cult. So the two have to try to figure out how to get out of here before they fall victim to this cult of children's horrifying practices. Now, I did do a reaction on this, so if you're curious about what I initially thought of it, go ahead and check that out. And I also mention and talk about this in my movie ranking of 2021 video, so go ahead and check that out too if you want to see. But this was in my top 10, spoiler, this is in my top 10 of movies I saw last year, and I love this movie. I'm pretty sure I gave it like a 9 or an 8 out of 10. It is so freaking good. So good. And before I get more into it, I want to say that I did get a little bit of inspiration by Sarah Hawkinson, who is of Possessed by Horror, but I wanted to talk about movies that I felt like should be mentioned, my taste, all that jazz. So I just want to briefly mention that. But yes, Children of the Corn is such a good movie to start off with because it is so much deeper than just a crazy cult. It pulls so many examples and so many, characters and themes from the Bible with Malachi, Isaac, Job, all of those characters are from the Bible. So I do enjoy this movie because it is a little bit deeper, and I put it in the psychological category because afterwards you feel like you want to do more research about it. And upon this too, I would also say The Wicker Man. I don't know when that one came out, but it's the original Wicker Man. I want to honorably mention that too because that one's also not very scary. It's kind of the same premise. This guy is a detective. He goes to this town to investigate a crime that happened there, but then he slowly starts to realize that he's trapped there and that everyone there is a freaking weirdo and they're all in a cult. So there you go, cult movies that aren't super gruesome, bloody, Midsummer-esque, but it is still a good premise. And I just am a sucker for children dealing with adult issues and children just being psychotic. Lord of the Flies is one of my favorite books of all time, and that's kind of the same thing. Next, we have Gerald's Game 2017. Now, this is actually the first movie commentary reaction that I've ever done on my channel, so if you haven't seen that, go ahead and check that out. It's super bad quality. quality though. Just just a small warning. It is quite honestly terrible quality, and we just have to accept that, you know, as a society. In hopes to rekindle their romance, a couple gets away to like a private little like Airbnb house or whatever that they have for the weekend in a remote area with no one around. But when her husband suffers a heart attack while they're kind of foreplaying and trying to, you know, get into it and dies, Jessie is left handcuffed to the bed and she must survive while overcoming both trauma and delirium. This one is so good. Now, there are trigger warnings for this. Trigger warnings of emotional, sexual, and child abuse. So just keep that in mind. But this movie was so interesting. Like, it felt like every little thing was something more I needed to unpack, but I just like couldn't get into it. Like, they would mention something. Mike Flanagan movie. This is a Mike Flanagan movie, so we love to see it. And he does such a good job portraying trauma and delirium. It is crazy, crazy, crazy. There's always stuff going on with this movie, and it is so beautifully shot as well, like aesthetically pleasing to look at. So it was just an amazing movie to watch. This was also in my top 10 of movies I've watched last year, so go ahead and check that out. But yes, this movie was amazing. But again, trigger warnings, you do want to look into that before you dive fully into this movie. Okay, next is a movie I feel like I don't really hear people talking about too much, or maybe they are and I'm just not in that part of the internet, but it is 1408, the 2007 movie. This is also a Stephen King adaptation. I mean, all three of these so far are Stephen King's adaptation, but 1408 also is, which I did not know that until I did my research. But I saw this movie when it first came out. Not first came out, because I was like 8 years old when it came out, but I saw this movie a long time ago, and I remember really liking it, and I always remember and think about it. Like, I think about it all the time to this day, and I've only seen it like a couple times, like freaking 10 years ago. It's about an author who enjoys debunking, you know, supernatural phenomenon, and he checks into the Dolphin Hotel for a little bit of inspiration for another book. But everything is not what it seems in this one, because he undergoes some crazy shit when he spends the night in a haunted room. This movie, I swear to God, it is so delirious. It truly is delirious. You feel like you don't even know what's real or not. When the movie ends, you know, the ending, you still don't really know like what's real and what isn't real. And that's why I put it in the psychological category, because there's so many little things that, you know, you have to look out for, that they make callbacks to, and it is just so well done. It is very trippy. I haven't seen this movie in a long ass time, but it is so freaking good. I think Samuel Jackson, John Cusack is in it too. Love, love, love. So it is a very good movie, and a very good movie to get into, to watch something that you kind of want, you know, your adrenaline to get up, but you don't want anything to really spook you, because this is kind of just what the fuck is happening. It's not a scary face or anything. That's why I put it on this list. Okay, next is I feel like a really popular one that people talk about when they recommend, you know, movies to start off with, or movies for beginners who are getting into the horror genre, and that is Get Out, the 2017 movie. Now, this is about a couple, Chris and Rose, and they travel to meet Rose's parents for a weekend getaway upstate. But as the weekend progresses, Chris starts, you know, to question the family's intentions and the town in general. So this is a very good movie because, again, it is not spooky scary, no like, bleh, like, you know what I mean? And it is also deals with deeper issues. It does deal with like racial issues. So again, trigger warning for racism, because they do deal with that, and that's kind of the premise for this movie is racism. But because of that, I feel like it allows it to be a lot deeper than just a horror movie about like, oh, these people are just, you know, racist or whatever. And again, it is very psychological because he kind of has to deal with other people seeing the truth onto why what they're doing is messed up. But again, no spoilers. Get Out 2017. Very good. Next, I have Would You Rather, the 2012 movie. I feel like I don't really hear people talking about this one either. It's a pretty easy premise. It's about 8 desperate individuals who agree to play a game of Would You Rather to receive a large sum of money from a sadistic rich socialite. Now, this movie, I kind of put it on a whim. At the time, it was on Netflix. Right now, it's only on Roku and Premium Prime Video. It's not like, ooh, a 10 out of 10, yes, I love that. But it is very interesting. And it is kind of just fun to watch, you know, psychological. They kind of have to deal with like what length will you go to in order to get this money, because it is dealing with desperate individuals. There are some people that just want the money and some people who really absolutely need the money. Like the main character, Brittany Snow, we love her, needs the money to get treatment for her sick brother. And so she does whatever she can to undergo all these would you rather freaking psychotic questions. But yeah, it is kind of trippy too, and kind of, it's not gory. It is kind of weird to watch because it does kind of feel like something that could happen, you know, like with 1408 or Gerald's Game, or maybe even like Get Out. You wouldn't really think that that's something that could happen. You can't really like imagine like what that would feel like. Although I would argue that Get Out, the way that they portray certain scenes, it really does feel like it's happening to you. Like the music, the noise, the setting, the camera angles, the editing, all of it makes it feel like you're in that moment. Would You Rather doesn't really do that to a T, but it does kind of just help you. Like it is something kind of basic, like, oh, we're gonna put your head underwater. Would you rather do this or put your head underwater? And you're like, okay, I guess I put my head underwater for like a minute. And it seems something like easy, but you're like holding your breath too while watching it. It's very suspenseful. And I really like movies like that where you're kind of holding your breath with the characters because you want to see what happens and you want to try to see if you can survive at the same time. So I really like this movie for that reason. Okay, next is a movie I feel like literally no one talks about, but I also put this movie on kind of on a whim just to see what it was. I ended up really liking it, and I always think about it, and I always feel like I need to like rewatch it. But this is Circle, the 2015 movie. Now this is on Netflix, and pretty easy premise as well. It's about 50 strangers who wake up and they all find out that they're in a giant room and they're all on little platforms basically, and they're basically all facing execution, and they, like among the 50 people, have to decide who gets out of there alive. But the issue is that they have to make a decision because every minute one of the platform kills someone randomly. So they all choose by voting, and basically it deals with the law, like, oh, you're a bad person, you're cheating on your wife, we're gonna kill you. And it's just, you know what I mean? So they all have to vote. If no one votes, it just picks someone at random. Like every minute someone's dying. So crazy. There's like a child in there, there's a bunch of old people, there's a pregnant woman. So it's like, who do you choose to survive? You know what I mean? Kind of fight with your morals and other people's morals, and you're kind of relying on other people's morals to like keep you alive, I guess. It's just a lot, and it's crazy. There are certain people, you start to like root for certain people, and you're like, I want this person to stay alive. And yeah, it's just crazy. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. You guys need to watch it. It's freaking wild. Okay, so that was it for the psychological aspect. Now we're going to get into thrillers. So for thrillers, I have another movie that I feel like also no one really talks about, but I always think about it, and that is When a Stranger Calls. And this is the 2006 version of this, because there is a 1979 original version of this. I haven't seen that one. I've only seen the 2006 one. So I'll probably watch the 1979 one because what's her name is in it, and I freaking love her. Yeah, Carol Kane. Yes, Carol Kane is in it. We love her. And so she's in it. But this movie, same premise, it's about a teenager that arrives at a luxurious home for a babysitting job, but things quickly go awry when a series of mysterious phone calls slowly take a sadistic turn. Yes, turn for the sinister. Blah. This movie is a good thriller to start off with because it is a little bit of Home Alone Invasion, a little bit of The Strangers, which I would also recommend that one, but I don't know. I just don't really like that movie for some reason. I don't really know why. I mean, it's okay. I like it enough to watch it, but would I watch it on my own free will? Probably not. But this one is a good, suspenseful movie. Of course, not spooky, scary. It's just about her because there's also an aspect of her, you know, being young. She's a freaking teenager, but also she's babysitting kids, so she has to like protect the kids too. These random kids that she's just babysitting for some money, you know what I mean? It's a very good movie if you want something kind of suspenseful, but something that's not actually gonna, you know, spook your socks off, I guess. All right, next we have one that I feel like people always recommend, and that is Hush 2016. This is a pretty easy premise too. It's about a deaf writer who is alone in the woods in her house, and she has to fight for her life when a masked murderer tries to break into her house. And that's it. So I believe this is also Mike Flanagan. Yes, okay, so it is Mike Flanagan. I love Mike Flanagan. This movie is also a very good suspenseful home invasion. Home invasion is a pretty good premise to watch a movie that's kind of thrillery, suspensey, that's not gonna be like demonic. So Hush is definitely one that is a safe movie to watch. But yeah, so it is just a little bit of an interesting premise considering that she is deaf and, well, I don't know what you do when a freaking guy is trying to break into your house. A lot of the times I was like, I don't know what I would do in this situation. She's smart. The girlie's smart. I'll tell you that much without spoiling too much. Okay, next is a movie that I actually think no one ever talks about. Truly, I don't see anyone talking about it. But it's one of those movies that I watched when it came out or a little bit after it came out, and it kind of stuck with me because I'm like, wow, this movie's actually pretty freaking good. And that is Disturbia, for 2007 fame. Now this has Shia LaBeouf in it, so I mean, if that's all you need to hear, then there you go. But seriously though, this movie is about a troubled high school student who during a house arrest becomes convinced that his neighbor is a wanted serial killer after spying on him. It's pretty easy premise as well. This freaking teenager is on house arrest, he's got a little troubled background, and he just starts like seeing the neighbor. He just starts looking over at the neighbor. Oh, okay, what's the neighbor doing? I'm bored, what am I gonna do? And then he starts seeing suspicious things, and he's like, that actually looks kind of weird. And then soon, slowly but surely, he starts to become convinced that he is a murderer. It is kind of a little bit, not gory, but sometimes it's a little spooky, but not too scary. Yeah, I really liked this movie. Like I said, I always think about it, and I always want to rewatch it because it is so suspenseful. Kind of like Don't Breathe energy, but if Don't Breathe was better. You know what I mean? So, there we go. Okay, next we have a very popular M. Night Shyamalan movie, Signs, of 2002. I don't have to delve too much into this premise because I feel like everybody knows. It's about a farmer just noticing a bunch of intricate patterns of circles appearing on his cornfield, and he goes to investigate, but slowly starts to discover that something more terrifying is occurring. It is kind of blown out of proportion. Everyone in town, everyone in the country, eventually everyone in the world starts dealing with this too, and it just becomes freaking pandemic, I guess. This one I would also say is a little bit psychological too, but also not crazy. I would only say it is because Mel Gibson kind of deals with psychological aspects of it, and his brother too, Joaquin Phoenix. Yes, we love to see it. This is baby Joaquin Phoenix if you want to see it. And this movie is also kind of funny too. So we love to see that. If you are interested in something, you know, kind of funny and psychological, not scary, this is all obviously the way to go. All right, next we have another very popular movie, another Stephen King adaptation, and that is Misery of 1990 fame. Now, this one I'm not going to explain the premise too much either, but after a serious car accident, famous writer Paul Sheldon is rescued by his #1 fan, who will stop at nothing to make sure that he never leaves. This movie makes me curious to read the book. I don't know if it's any different. If you've read the book, let me know because I am interested. But this movie is kind of those, like, if you've never seen it, it's kind of like what the fuck type of things because it's just about psychotic women and we love to see it. Also, this is kind of the same thing as hush. They're kind of in a secluded area, nowhere to go. If you escape, where are you gonna go? Basically, type of thing. So movies like that truly stress me out because it is one thing to escape and to do it successfully, but it's another thing to escape and then you just find out you're in the middle of nowhere and you can't go anywhere. So what do you do? I don't know. I kind of forgot how this ended, honestly. I'll have to rewatch it. But that one scene, if you know, you know. It truly is like chilling. It is chilling to see. And the acting in this is amazing. Like truly amazing. Kathy Bates, obviously our icon, our queen. She does an amazing job. Obviously, I would expect nothing less from her, but she does an amazing job being a psychotic woman, and we love to see it. So that's also, if you're interested in just seeing like, oh, people are just crazy, and that's the aspect of the movie. Like people are they're just crazy, and that's all that there is to it. This movie is a good one to really delve into that aspect of horror. Okay, next we have another Stephen King adaptation. I'm sorry about it, but it is Cujo, 1983. I don't really hear people talking too much about Cujo nowadays, but I think that the premise is interesting because people hold dogs very near and dear to their heart and animals, and that's like one of the number one things in movies that people don't want to see is an animal dying. So with this premise, a dog is bitten by a bat and he starts to become more and more aggressive with people around him, people that he loves, all that type of stuff. And he basically goes on a killing spree. And this is a situation because, well, the dog's on a killing spree, but also because it kind of leaves Donna, who is, a mother, with her son trapped in their car because Cujo is terrorizing them and they're too afraid to leave their car. So it's a little bit of survival. It's a little bit demonic, but not scary, spooky, I'm gonna jump at your face. It's just a dog. This one is a little scary because obviously it could just be like, oh, the dog has rabies and the dog is being crazy because he has rabies. But I feel like it goes a little bit more than that because it's a little more demonic than that. Yes, rabies is bad, but also you don't kill everybody in your life. I don't know. I never had rabies, so I don't know what happens when you get rabies, but this movie is pretty good. And like I said, people want to root for the dog all the time, but obviously when the dog is psychotic and killing everybody, you're like, somebody freaking get this guy out of here, you know what I mean? So it tugs at your heartstrings a little bit too because you're like, oh, it's a dog. I'm telling you, you won't root for this guy if you're watching this movie. I'm telling you that much. Watch it. It's a very good movie. So there we go. We love to see it. All right, this one is one that I always think about. I always have it on my mind, and I'm like, anyone else know what I'm talking about? Does anyone else know what's happening? Because fucking this movie is crazy. But this movie is 10 Cloverfield Lane of 2016 fame. This one is also a little bit of survival. It's about a girl who survives a car accident and finds herself in an underground bunker with two men. And they've convinced her that a massive chemical attack has rendered the air unbreathable, and their only chance at survival is staying in that underground bunker with them. And she's like, okay, I guess, like, if that's the truth, because she kind of undergoes some head trauma. But obviously the men have more sinister plans for her, and she starts to get suspicious and slowly starts to discover the truth about the outside world. Now, this movie is freaking weird. Let me tell you what. We have our queen, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and John Goodman, weirdly enough, is in there too. I always forget about him. It says that Bradley Cooper's in it too, but I feel like I don't remember him being in there because they mostly deal with the three people, the girl and the two guys that trapped her. So I feel like he's not really in it that much, but maybe that's just me being oblivious, I guess. But yeah, this movie is kind of trippy because she's trying to escape, but it's one of those things where she's like, maybe the world is actually unbreathable and I'm just gonna die when I get out there. And it's also kind of not like home invasion, but kind of let's escape this place. That's what I feel like thrillers really are, just let's escape and get out of here. You know what I mean? So this movie is very trippy, it's very weird, and the ending, I feel like, really shook me. And I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. It's a pretty good movie, not gonna lie. And the last one for this thriller category is a most recent reaction, first time watching reaction that I did on this channel, and this is Orphan 2009. Again, if you haven't seen my reaction to that, go ahead and watch it and do so if you want to get a little bit more of an idea of what it is. But basically, this is about a couple, Kate and John, that basically loses their child, their unborn child, so they're dealing with that kind of trauma. But upon this, they decide to adopt a 9-year-old girl from a foster home, and things start to go awry. I'll tell you that much. Continuous dangerous events start to unfold, all seemingly around Esther, and all these things somehow have her involved. And they start to get a little bit suspicious, and Kate more specifically starts to question Esther's true intentions. This one is very good. I really like this one, and it's, again, one of those things, kind of like Cujo, where you're like, you want to root for the child. I love watching movies about psychotic children, and that's what this is. Children just be like that sometimes, you know what I mean? And like I said, same thing with Cujo, you kind of want to root for the children, you kind of want to root for the dog, but when they being crazy, you're like, someone get this guy out of here, you know what I mean? In this case, someone get Esther out of here, what the hell? Let me tell you this much, there's no cure for what Esther's problem is. There's no cure for it, I'll tell you that much. But it is, you know, she's always up to something. This movie is always like, she's got another plan. She's a girly with a plan, I'll tell you that much. And she keeps these people in line, I'll tell you that much. She knows how to manipulate. She is the queen of gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. That's all I'll say of that. Okay, next we have our comedy horror category. I only have 3 movies for this one, but I feel like I should make this a category if you're just in for a really lighthearted but still classic horror movie. The first being also kind of a recent movie reaction that I did is Killer Clowns from Outer Space, 1988 fame. Now, if you haven't watched my reaction to that, go ahead and do so. This one is amazing because it is so campy in a good way. If you want to watch a good, campy, kind of a cult following movie, that's what this movie is, because it wasn't until much after this movie came out that people were like, this movie's kind of funny in the best way possible. It's very self-aware, and it's kind of like ridiculous too, which is always the way to go if you're trying to make a comedy horror. And that's what all these movies in this category do well, is that they're aware that they are kind of obscure. But in this movie, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, teenagers Mike and Debbie decide to investigate a comet that crashes nearby, but are met with something a little bit more horrifying and also hard to believe. So the couple must team up to try to defeat the Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That's basically the premise of it. This has a lot of niche things in there, and the makeup artist really popped off for this one too. For it being a movie that came out in 1988, the makeup design and the production design, I would also argue too, is very well done, and it's very aesthetically pleasing to look at too, because it's also very colorful. The music is also, you know, bangers all day every day, and yeah, I just really love movies like that. So if you're in for a colorful, funny, kind of obscure movie, this is the movie for you. All right, next we have Trick or Treat. I also have a reaction to this one on my channel if you want to go ahead and check that out. But this movie is a bunch of different interwoven stories in one movie, which I love. And it's a little bit scary stories to tell in the dark-esque, if that can kind of register in your mind, you know, if you want to like kind of compare it to something. Scary Stories in the Dark is also a good movie to watch for, I don't know, I would say, I don't know what category I put it in terms of this, maybe comedy horror. I don't know if it's like super funny, but it's a little too scary for me, which is why I'm not recommending it in this one. It's not super scary, but it's freaky to me, and everyone that I know that watches it that are adults, like in their 30s, are like, yeah, that movie freaked me out. But anyways, Trick or Treat, basically interwoven stories that demonstrate that Halloween traditions should always be kept, and it basically follows a bunch of different small town residents that face these consequences for not following these Halloween traditions. There's like a mysterious trick-or-treater that basically keeps everyone in line, like our girl Esther, and makes sure that Halloween goes as planned and no You'll get hurt. So yeah, this one is a very good movie. It is also kind of very niche. It's very, you know, cult following because this didn't have a theatrical release, I'm pretty sure. I think it went straight to like DVD or something like that. And it is just a really good like Halloween movie. Like Halloween, the original Michael Myers, you know, Halloween, that one, it honestly has nothing on Trick or Treat. This movie screams Halloweeny, like Halloween for sure. And for it coming out in 2007, I love how the story is interwoven, and I love the graphics, the effects, and how everything basically comes into play at the end and how the series of events unfold. I like how it's displayed for us. So if you want something that's really like, you know, this movie was really thought out and the writers popped off, this is the movie for you. And it is especially so much fun to watch during Halloween because of how Halloweeny it is. Like, come on, trick or treat, it's Halloween. So yes, this one is amazing, so freaking good. I love it. And upon that, we have Krampus of 2015 fame. Now this is the same director as Trick or Treat, which when I reacted to Krampus, which again, if you haven't seen that reaction, go ahead and do so. I loved it, but upon that reaction, people were telling me that it's the same director, Michael Dougherty, that directed Trick or Treat and Krampus. And when you watch, you know, either or, and when you see both of them, you definitely understand and get that vibe that it's the same director. Because in Krampus, it is like one kind of story. You know, it's basically about an ancient European legend that basically causes havoc on this family during the holiday season when Krampus comes to punish naughty children on Christmas Eve. This one is also, he needs to do a movie for like every holiday, but I feel like Halloween and Christmas are like the two main holidays that you can make kind of obscure movies about like this. Santa Claus, all of this like come into play. And I would argue this is also a really amazing movie to watch during the holiday season because it is so like, so many red and green and snow and reindeer and like all this freaking stuff just like thrown out there, and it just all weaves in so well. And not to only mention, it is such a good, I would say it's a really good plot too. This also has Ben Platt and Toni Collette, icons. We love to see Toni Collette. So yeah, the acting is amazing too. It also has, what's his name from The Office? David Koechner. Yeah, David Koechner. Amazing, amazing. So this movie is just super good and I love it. Okay, next we have our biggest category, and that is our horror/thriller classics. All right, these are the movies where you want to watch a classic, but not one that's actually like scary, terrifying, Hereditary, Midsummer-esque. Now, first one I have to recommend. I have to do my civil duty and recommend this one, and it is Scream, 1996 fame. Now, this one, if you don't know the premise, so I'll explain it very briefly. It's about a teenage girl that's terrorized a year after her mother's murder. So she's terrorized by a mass killer who kind of utilizes horror films as part of his deadly game, I guess we can say. This one is a good, I was gonna put it in comedy horror because it is, but it is just so much of a classic horror movie that I had to put it in this one. Now, I know people that haven't seen Scream because they're scared of, you know, actual scary movies, and I always recommend them Scream. You gotta watch it because it is not in your face, bleh, scary. You know what I mean? It just is a good premise, and it's a little bit psychological because you're trying to get away from this killer and you feel like you can't trust anyone around you. So there's a lot of different aspects of who you can trust and why is this happening to me, and, you know, insecurities and all that type of stuff going on. But again, it is also a comedy. You wouldn't think of me describing that would be a comedy, but it is. is. It's funny. The writing is just pops off, and it's directed by Wes Craven, who we love. Love Wes Craven on this channel. We do. And yeah, it's just a really good, funny movie and a little bit of psychological. Sound interesting to you? I would recommend Scream and the whole Scream franchise, but you gotta start off with the first one if you've never seen it. Next is another good ass movie that I feel like I just, any excuse to talk about this franchise, and that is Child's Play, 1988 Fame. This one is the best one. This franchise is ginormous. Like, there are so many movies and most recently a TV series, which is really good. If you're interested in any of that, go ahead and watch it on my channel. I did all the movies and every episode of the TV series on my channel. But this first movie, I'll give a brief little summary. It's about a single mom who buys her son, Andy, a popular doll named Chucky. Things slowly start to quickly take a turn for the worse when Andy discovers that the doll is possessed by the spirit of a serial killer named Charles Lee Ray. The Child's Play movies, Child's Play 1, 2, and 3, are their own vibe. They're 80s, 90s vibe, you know, type of movies, and they play off each other really freaking well. And so this one is very good because, and it's also a little bit of comedy too, because they're also very self-aware that it is a doll terrorizing and killing people. So it's like, okay, is this really like that scary? But yes, it is, because he's freaking strong as hell. So it's a little comedy in there because they're kind of self-aware that we're like, it's a doll. But because of that also, it's scary. There you go. Okay, next we have one of the first reaction commentaries that I've done on this channel, and that is The Silence of the Lambs of 1991 Fame. Now, this one I really enjoyed. If I wasn't putting this in the classic category, I would put this in the psychological category, or maybe even the thriller one. But this is basically just about a top student at an FBI training academy named Clarice, who is basically sought out to interview Dr. Hannibal Lecter, who is a brilliant psychiatrist, but also a cannibal, and he's facing time for his murders. He is kind of believed to have insight on a case that is, you know, foregoing or undergoing, I guess. A case that is unfolding, and Clarice is going in to see if he has some info and try to solve this case. It's very good. It's one of those things that you kind of have to watch a couple times. I feel like I have to watch it a couple times to really absorb everything that they want me to, but I feel like I absorbed a lot upon first watching it. It's a little bit, you know, it's a little bit creepy. It's a little bit Law and Order-esque, where they're trying to solve this, and Hannibal Lecter is amazing in the worst way possible. You know what I mean? He is amazing because he's so bad, and he's such a baddie, and he's so cruel and scary, and his voice and everything about him is just terrifying. And friggin' Anthony Hopkins does an amazing job. Jodie Foster, we love her. This is a very good classic to get into. People will ride hard for this movie, and also upon it coming out in 1991, it is very, I would say, ahead of its time, considering Jodie Foster is a girl boss and a baddie as well. So there we go. Okay, next we have a movie that is honestly one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't really know why, but I always want to watch it, and I always think about it. And that is Poltergeist of 1982 Fame. This one is very weird, I'll tell you that much. But it's basically about strange and horrifying events that start to occur to a family, and they discover that a ghost has captured their youngest daughter through a TV set. Kind of weird. And so the family basically has to save her by entering that ghost dimension. This movie is kind of long, not gonna lie. The ending was kind of weird, not gonna lie. I don't know, I love the vibes. I love the like suspense of like you thinking something's gonna happen, but it doesn't. And I think I just kind of like the idea that she's just like this little girl trapped in there, and she was like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. But yeah, I just love the vibe of it too, 80s, and that I feel like really make this movie a good build-up movie. This is a little bit of a longer movie, so save it for a rainy day. But I really like this movie, and I always want to watch it, so Poltergeist, the original. 1982. Next, we have a movie that I honestly didn't even know existed until I started this channel and people were requesting me to react to this movie, and that is An American Werewolf in London of 1981 fame. Now, this is kind of like a good classic werewolf movie. Sometimes it's a little spooky, scary face, at least for my taste, but let me give you the premise. It's about these two American college students that are backpacking through Britain, and they're attacked by a large wolf, and the wolf kills one of the friends. So this kind of leaves David, the one who survives, kind of plagued with the nightmares of the murder of his friend, and also kind of just revealing the truth because he starts getting kind of like delusions and hallucinations of his dead friend telling him, "You're a werewolf now." And he's like, "What the fuck? Why am I a werewolf? Who, what, when, where, why?" And so they kind of deal with him, you know, cute girly things. It's like turning into a werewolf at night. This is all new for me. How do I adapt to this? You know, how do I get this werewolf out of me? Do I kill myself or do I don't know. So it deals with a little bit of like psychological too. But one of the best werewolf transformation scenes of all time. Like it probably is the best one. It is so like the makeup artist popped off for this one. Popped off, I swear to God. And also just a little cute thing if you want to really know about how much thought went into this movie. All of the songs for this movie have the word moon in it. So that's a cute little Easter egg, but a little something that kind of adds to the plot or kind of adds to the aspect of liking the movie. In my opinion, I thought that it was kind of a cool thing to learn. So this one was very good. I think I gave it like an 8 out of 10. There are some scenes that I feel like are unnecessary, which again, if you want to see what I'm talking about, go ahead and watch my reaction. There are some scenes that I feel like are a little unnecessary, but in terms of watching a good classic werewolf movie, American Werewolf in London is a very good one to start with. Okay, next is classic, another Stephen King adaptation, and that is Carrie of 1976 fame. Now, this, I'm not going to go into the premise too much because you probably already know, but it's just about a shy and sensitive teen named Carrie who is constantly terrorized by her classmates and her abusive, psycho-religious mother. But slowly and surely, some weird, abnormal occurrences start to happen around Carrie, and she starts to discover that she has supernatural powers and decides to use them to her advantage. I'll leave it at that. A little bit of revenge story, a girly with a plan. I love movies about a girly with a plan. I'll say that much. This movie is, if you're a girl, it hits a little bit close to heart because you want to root for Carrie, you know? It deals with like obviously like being a girl, being a young girl, insecurities, and it doesn't help the fact that her mom is also psychotic and it's just her and her mom, no one else, so that's never fun when your mom's psychotic. So she deals with a lot, she kind of has no escape, so when she starts to discover that she has these powers, basically she's like, oh crap, maybe I ought to like, I don't know, do something about it and like use it the way I want to, you know what I'm saying? So we love to see it, but again, it's not spooky scary. Very good, kind of a thriller, I guess I would say. And it's not scary, but the story is good. It is Carrie. Sorry, I just had to. All right, the next one that I have for you guys is a classic that you can pop off and say like, I've seen this movie and I really like it. And it is A Nightmare on Elm Street of 1984 fame. I put this in my top 10. I think I gave it like a 10 out of 10 for all the movies I've seen in 2021. This movie, Wes Craven pops off. Wes Craven of also Scream fame. He has very similar storytelling, you know, ways in both movies, but in this one specifically, it's about a group of teens that fall prey to a disfigured midnight mangler who basically haunts their dreams, but only to find out that the murder happens in real life too. So basically anything that happens in your dream happens in real life too, and it's a little bit psychological as well because it's all about falling asleep. He comes to you every night in your sleep. Very creepy premise, and makeup artist popped off. Seriously, he looks so creepy and gross, and there's just like little things that are just like, ew, what the heck, and like, bleh, like it gives you the chills. It gives you the chills in a good way. I would say in a way that's not like I'm gonna poop my pants, I have the chills, but it's not like jump scare, you know what I mean? Again, this premise is so interesting and unique to me, especially for the time when everyone just did a bunch of like slasher mama boy movies, but A Nightmare on Elm Street didn't. Wes Craven had something brewing up there in his mind. It's very good, very, very good premise, very interesting story. I love it, love it, love it. Okay, next we have Tom Holland classic. Child's Play is what Tom Holland directed, but he also directed Fright Night of 1985 fame. Tom Holland, he popped off, I'm telling you that much. This one is it's kind of like a little bit like Disturbia. It's about this horror film junkie named Charlie. He starts to believe that his new neighbor is actually a vampire. And of course, nobody believes him. So he basically turns to the only person who he thinks can help him, and it's basically washed up former television vampire slayer Peter Vincent. Okay, this movie, I didn't know how I was gonna feel about it, but I'm so glad I watched it. This movie, like, I didn't have any expectations. It tugged at my heartstrings, I'll tell you that much. It was also kind of visually pleasing to see because, I don't know, the colors. And this is also kind of like American Werewolf in London. A good classic, hey, I just want to see a freaking vampire movie that isn't Twilight. Or a good werewolf movie that isn't also Twilight. You know what I mean? You want to watch a good vampire movie, especially during Halloween? Fright Night. Fright Night is the one you want to watch. Also, of Child's Play fame, has Chris Sarandon? This movie, very good. It gives you the vibes, the 80s vibes that you ask and you want to receive. You ask, you shall receive with this movie. And it's also kind of an interesting, you know, dynamic to have this former television star, Peter Vincent, come in and try to help. It's very good, very interesting, a very classic movie, and we love Chris Sarandon. Sarandon. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry. Okay, last movie on this list is, I think, one of my most recent movie reaction commentaries, and that is My Bloody Valentine of 1981 fame. This is kind of an easy premise as well. Legends of a murderer resurface when Valentine's Day rolls around and all who celebrate are slowly picked up and killed one by one. Now, this one is very good, kind of like psychological aspect of too. It reminds me a little bit of Black Christmas, which I can also say Black Christmas can be on this list too, if you want kind of a holiday-esque, not super scary classic horror movie. Although I was kind of disturbed by it a little bit. My Bloody Valentine is not that disturbing. It takes place amongst these miners. M-I-N-E-R. I realized afterwards that I kept saying miners and it kind of sounded like M-I-N-O-R, and I was like, please, I hope no one takes that out of context. I'm talking about an actual coal mine, underground, M-I-N-E-R, a miner. I don't know if that was intentional because you can be like, be mine, and you're in a mine. But I mean, it probably was, right? I mean, they probably thought that through. I mean, it didn't take me very long to think that through. But this movie is very good because it's not spooky scary, but it still freaks you out a little bit, especially because it's centered around a holiday that's supposed to be like love and caring and flowers and chocolates, and it's interesting deaths. You know what I mean? It has interesting creative kills, and that's something that I just always look for. I love kills that are interesting, that aren't just I'm getting stabbed by, you know what I mean? My Bloody Valentine, it doesn't do that. It is just interesting to watch as, again, a little holiday, but a different holiday. That's kind of what I liked about it. It was a little bit of a different holiday. So there you go. That is my list. Those are all the 26 movies that I think you guys ought to watch if you're interested. If you want something that's spooky but not gonna spook your socks off and make you poop your pants. So, with that being said, let me know what movies would you guys recommend, or what movies would you guys put on this list. I'm interested, fascinated, curious as to what you guys say, because you guys haven't steered me wrong with these movie suggestions. All right, so I'm definitely open and to hear more. I am very curious. So with that being said and done, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all of that jazz. And as always, thanks for watching.